Phoenix Rising by Michael Anastas. We stood there for a moment, pondering what could have possibly happened. Gary had walked away from us, and the rain had stopped in an instant. Wraith, I said to myself. Only he could create such an illusion. Off in the distance, someone shouted, "Hey, the rain stopped!" and a cloud of dust formed before us. Ash?" Misty stuttered. "What happened to the light in the distance?" A glance at Brock's memorized map, and he explained that his had been water-stained as well. He got a blow to the head from everyone but Serge and I. Instead of the open plains, we were surrounded by cliffs on almost all sides. "Kangaskhan's," muttered Ash. "I remember this." Ash was right. Before we knew it, the cloud formed around us, and we were surrounded by a huge herd of parent Pokemon, all of which didn't look too pleased. "This is odd," said Merlin. "It looks like there's twice as many Kangaskhan's here than there's supposed to be in the entire world." "We've improved in numbers." All eyes turned to the left, and a young man, probably 13 or 14, came through the crowd. His attire consisted of black shorts and a white tank top, and he carried a metal boomerang at his side, which he held with a black leather glove. "I remember you," said Ash, lightly tapping his forehead. "Tommy?" "In the flesh. Glad to know that you've lived as long as you have." Serge and Merlin snickered to themselves until I threw a Pokeball at them, hitting Serge square on the noggin. He rubbed his forehead and smiled innocently. Ash had the same kind of smile on his face. "Well, yeah, I guess I've been all right." Tommy turned his gaze towards us. "I see you've made some friends since we last met." Some of the Kangaskhan's responded in chorus. One of them came up to Serge and gently lifted Jessie's head up and looked her in the face. "Kangaskhan! Kangaskhan!" it bellowed. "Huh?" Tommy looked over Serge's shoulder and saw what he was yelling about. "It's her! It's one of them!" He drew his boomerang. "Hey, Tommy! She's on our side!" "What? You took sides with your worst enemy?" "Not by choice. The Hurricane." "Hurricane?" Tommy lowered his weapon. "Is that what it is?" "From coast to coast," said Merlin. "At least, it was coast to coast." "But now, what the hell happened?" The Kangaskhan shouted things at random. "He said that Wraith tried to hypnotize him," said Faith. Tommy walked up beside Ash. "Is that why she's on your side? To help you stop the storm?" "Yes." "Well, a friend of Ash's is a friend of mine. Come, we'll take you back home." Tommy and the Kangaskhan horde brought us to a cave, where a bonfire once burned bright, now reduced to a little candle flame on the last dry ashes. Ash's instructions to all of us were to go play with the kids. Merlin shrugged and walked down to where the horde had grouped up, and the rest of us followed his example like good little Catholic schoolboys. No offense to the Catholics. While Ash and Tommy reminisced over whatever they could, the Kangaskhan's closed in on us, taking extreme interest in Merlin and I, probably because we were really the new guys. Other than Merlin's, I had never actually seen a Kangaskhan, and even then, I'd be a football field's length away when I did. 6 of them formed a circle around me, so tight that the kids in the pouches were feeling or smelling the materials on my jacket. If they all stepped closer, I'd be crushed between them, and everyone knew it too, but nobody really gave much thought of it. One of the kids took my glasses and put them on himself, and that was where I drew the line. I just reached for them, and the mother stepped back and latched onto my collar with one of her claws. "Hey, come on! I need those!" The kid just smiled and rocked his head back and forth in the pouch. "Maybe I do look like a nerd, but I'm actually pissed off easily." "You're as soft as a tentacle!" shouted Merlin, and right then, I wished the possibility of him being struck by lightning would be greater than it was. Of course, it was true, because I went limp in the Kangaskhan's hand inside. "Fine, wear 'em for now." The mother set me back down on my feet, but she kept her hand behind me. I got the feeling that she was petting me, and until we reached the refinery, it was one of the most unpleasant experiences of my life. Pokemon, by definition, were pocket monsters, so the fact that this one's hand was half my size was really disturbing. "Looks like you've made a friend," said Merlin as he sat down on the grass. "Savor the moment. It doesn't happen often when you're a Phoenix trainer." That statement couldn't have been more true. I've met plenty of people, hung out with friends, took girls to nice restaurants, but once they learned that I had the Phoenix badge, almost all the time they challenged me to a match. Of course, I'd win, and then they'd get pissed off at me, and upon thinking about that, the Kangaskhan didn't bother me all that much anymore. "The rain's back," Faith reported, as I felt the first drop on the back of my neck. It was nothing, though, just a light shower like we had gotten in Pallet Town. Of course, it was destined to pick up sooner or later. Merlin cupped his hands to his mouth and called out to the hills. "Hey, dead man! Stop loitering and get down here!" Ash ran down the hill with Tommy stumbling behind him. "What the hell have you been doing for the past 2 hours? We've got 50 million lives at stake, and you're busy chatting about Pokemon battles you fought back when you couldn't fight for jack crap?" "Sorry," said Ash. "I thought you could use a break. And I really could, and that's why I'd like to be done with this as soon as possible. If I'm going to take a break, I'm going to do it when the world is fully intact. Even then, why in God's name would this be the time to take a break? We've all been sitting here for the past hour bitching about how you're blowing time doing nothing." "Faith looks like she's having fun," said Tommy. I slowly turned my gaze towards Faith, who had stopped playing with the kid and was now being played with by the parent. I'd let the moment completely slip my mind until Faith reminded me as I wrote these words, but as much as she wants me to do so, I think it would take too long to write down everything she would like me to. For that, she set my hair ablaze. "That's besides the point," said Merlin. "We have no time on our hands. Sure, we can wait a few days to actually get to the refinery, but who knows how many people are at risk right now?" "You've only known Tommy for a few hours," said Brock. "How is it possible that you can reminisce for longer than you actually knew each other?" We weren't talking to each other," said Tommy. "He was talking. I was listening." "Whatever. We gotta go." "I cannot permit you to do that." The Kangaskhan fled to the cave, and a man wearing a trench coat stepped out into the clearing. One of Surge's weapons was in his hands. Merlin stepped back, his hands trembling. "But you're dead," he stuttered, while pointing a shaking finger at him. "Death is just a door," he said as he walked up. "Hasn't your friend Ash taught you anything about death? Well, I've risen from the grave, my son, just so I could see your face one last time." He raised his weapon directly at Merlin. "Goodbye, my son." Merlin stepped back amongst the statues that were us, completely enveloped in fear. Merlin's father? The man who had been lost at sea 10 years ago? "Wait!" said Merlin, so suddenly that we came back to life from shock. "May I have one last word?" His father lowered the gun and glared at him. "As the tradition goes." He raised his gun back at Merlin. "And what are your last words?" "Just one," said Merlin, forcing up a nervous grin. "Arcanine!" Arcanine bounded out from the bushes and sent a fireball straight in his father's direction. There was an explosion, and the gun flew off in the distance. Yet when the smoke cleared, he still remained perfectly intact, like nothing had happened at all. "Is that all you have?" he laughed. "You would dare throw a candle at me? Your beloved father?" Merlin drew his sword. "The man who abused his Pokemon, abandoned my mother, leaving her to die of a broken heart, and just pointed a bazooka at my head. And you dare call yourself my beloved father?" He sliced the air before him. "The only reason I didn't hunt you down was because you were supposed to have died 10 years ago." "This is more than I would have expected." Lightning flashed in the distance, and in that short amount of time, Merlin's father drew his sword. "Maybe it's time we see if you really can use that sword." Merlin's eyes fell upon the sword, and he held his before him. "Wraith, you are a fool. Do you truly believe there are two swords that look exactly like this?" He let it swing through the air and let the blunt end land on his shoulder, and Ash saw just exactly how much detail was engraved in the sword. The handle was, without a doubt, where most of the gems were located. The grip was sheathed in black silk, probably for comfort purposes. Where the handle met the blade, there was a slight cross, normally used to keep the swordsman's hand from touching the blade, now sufficed as a decorative ornament, made of gold and adorned by a blood-red stone. The blade itself was mostly made of finely polished silver, but the actual tip of the blade was carved from gold. Physics-wise, it would have been a poor choice in combat, and would have been more appropriately used as a decoration, yet Merlin had been known to rely on it in the darkest of hours. "So, you figured it out," laughed his father. "I never would have believed my idiot of a son would have come to such a conclusion so soon." "I'm not your son!" Merlin shouted. Arcanine, start me up!
Okay.
You heard me! Give me fuel! Give me fire! Give me that which I desire! Do you honestly believe your sword can do that? His father asked. Honestly, I do not believe you are worthy of my... Arcanine shot a fireball at Merlin, landing a perfect bullseye on the red stone, and in that moment, the gold edge of the blade turned bright red. His father was motionless. In all my years, I never would have believed the sword had any power to speak of. It looks like I owe you one. Merlin swung the sword in his father's direction, and a massive ball of fire shot towards him, hitting right between the eyes. Ash and Misty covered their eyes, afraid to look, but there, where Merlin's father once stood, was the biggest ghost they had ever seen. I am impressed, the ghost laughed. I guess there's just no more secrets, are there? Well, my task is complete. I will see you soon, my son. Very soon. He smiled an evil smile and faded away.